We'll be able to, thank you very much. We'll be able to share this with folks who weren't able to join. So my name is Lisa Ames. I know many of you, and for those that don't know me, I'm an operating executive here at Norwest Venture Partners. And we love doing events like this, which are, as I've mentioned many times, non-sales events, which is really unusual in the marketing world and in any of our worlds. And we do this because we want to not only help accelerate the success velocity of our companies by giving them important insights and knowledge that they can use in their lives and in their work, but we also want to share these insights with the broader community because, you know, marketers and sales folks love to come together and just improve. And so really excited about today's topic is, of course, you know, how to fast track your path to ABM success and maturity. And really excited to welcome a couple of folks here who are going to share their expertise. First, we have Lisa Sharapata, who is the VP of Marketing at MindTickle, which is one of our companies. She's an ABM power user. I've talked to her many times, and it seems like she's become my go-to person when I have ABM questions, and she's always so generous with her knowledge and really gets hands-on and into the detail. And so definitely someone you're going to want to ask a lot of questions of. We also have John Miller, who is the CMO of Demandbase. And as many of you know, I spent 4 years at Demandbase, so the company is near and dear to my heart, also in our portfolio. I didn't overlap with John, but I've gotten a chance to get to know him recently, and that's been really fun, and hope to continue working with the folks at Demandbase. And so just to kind of set expectations here, as I mentioned, we are recording this, so if any of you want to rewind and listen for some of the insights afterwards or share it with your colleagues, we certainly welcome that. And we're going to have our speakers spend about 25 minutes or so going through some slides, but very much want to make this a discussion. And you can submit chats throughout the session, and then we'll leave at the end, just live Q&A, ask me anything, and we'll wrap up about 10 o'clock. All right. And so I want to pass it over to start with you, Lisa. And take it away, please.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see here. I'll get started with, and we can just flip to the next slide, but I know the first question that we are answering today is around the idea of when does ABM fit and when does it not fit? And I find it interesting. I see Declan's on this call, and he just posted something on LinkedIn the other day that I reacted to. And one of the things was all these different criteria about when ABM is a good fit, when it's not. And I kind of simplify it into this idea where if you're marketing to a group of people, and it's any sort of a complex sale where you've got to convince multiple stakeholders that have different buying jobs or different roles, different like hats that they're wearing to buy your product, then ABM is a good fit. So I know it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's kind of what I boil it down to, because you have to figure out how to surround that account and the right stage and where they're at in that buying stage and what the message is and all of those types of things as well. So I've started ABM kind of back before it was even a thing and done it in companies. Like when I was at Teradata, we did it just because we needed some one-to-one outreach to surround an account because we had multiple decision makers and we were trying to push some deals over the finish line. And then like the next time I started implementing it was because we did a lot of research and we were realizing that we were getting into deals too late. And it started with this idea of we needed the intent data. We needed to know who was in market, and we had all this great branding in place and all of that great inbound happening, but we were guessing at how many points to give a piece of content and what does that mean if they filled out the form and actually gave us their right email address, and who else, you know, then do we need to try to figure out in that account that we have to talk to as well. And so we started turning on this intent data and these signals to be able to get on earlier in the deal cycle And then what we started to discover is that we were also then able to scale. And for me, that's really the biggest thing then, is being able to take this and ABM as a strategy and an overall go-to-market strategy versus a tactic. And so I look at it from, like, on the left is kind of this old school processing leads, funnels, assigning points to things, and processing people through your funnel. And the right being this much more customer centric approach, where you're looking at what does this account and brand need, and how are we going to help them solve it and be more of a lifelong partner, as just, again, a holistic go-to-market strategy that really changes the game in general, and you have to be bought in. So I guess with that, we could probably move to the next slide. And just getting started, one of the other things we wanted to talk about is, like, how do you get started and how do you align sales and marketing? And I've just kind of thrown in some numbers here, but for me, the biggest thing is the bottom line is revenue. That's what everybody's working towards. You've got AEs, they're account executives, they're working accounts already. So when you can start breaking things down into, this is how many accounts we need to win to hit our new name number, and then our cross-sell, upsells, and expansions, like, I left that out of here for now. But when you can start breaking it down, talking their language, and saying, all right, if we have an average ACV of 100K an account, and I need 60 million for the year, marketing needs to deliver you 500 qualified accounts if we're going to convert at a 10% rate from top. Like, just try to do simple math and say, we're on the same team, we have the same goals, and then build from there. So that's kind of like the first thing I put out there, kind of everywhere I'm at now, is get aligned on what the goals are. And then the last point I'll make before we hand it off to John, if you want to just go down one more slide, is then knowing what those accounts are. So one of the things that intent data has really helped me with and helped change the game on is seeing who's in market, being able to build out segments based on what they're searching for, so that we can really create an experience that's meaningful and resonates with our target audience, where they are in the funnel. So understanding, hey, this account, these people have just started looking, and I'll go into this a little bit more later, but when I get, like, the list of tier 1 accounts at the beginning of the year from the AEs, and I build a segment out of it and look and see, like, 3% of your accounts are actually in market and the rest of them aren't searching for anything that we can help them with, it's kind of like, let's look at this together and look at the data and go back to the drawing board and reconsider. So having that partnership with sales and having that insight really makes a difference.
And Lisa, one of the things I wanted to interject with, as I hear you talking about intent data, I think about the companies I talk to regularly and some of the questions they have about ABM. And one of the biggest things, and John, you probably have a point of view on this too, is that, well, sales doesn't really trust the intent data, right? So maybe you guys can weave into your talk tracks here about, well, how do you overcome that? And like, what's a point of view for them to consider, so that we're all in this together, we're all believing that this is the right approach.
Yeah, I'll just go back to that first slide I shared. And it's like, so prior to this, marketing, one more, is assigning points to different pieces of content or different events or different personas. And that was basically the intent data, right? It's like, they filled out this form, they must be really interested in talking to us, versus having a much more holistic of all the different engagement and activities. It's not just what they're searching. Did they come to your website? Are they searching for your competitors? How many different keywords or subjects are they searching for? So I tried to say, like, this was much more finger in the wind to the old way. This new way, it, like, let's just say it's only 75% accurate or 80% accurate. It gets way more accurate than any other information that you have. So that's part one. And then part two, I'm starting to show them, like, for an account, at least in my world, for an account to be marketing qualified, it has to be our ICP fit, and they have to be searching for keywords and engaging with us at a certain level. Once they hit that threshold, they're considered marketing qualified. Like, that is converting 6x higher than any of the accounts that weren't marketing qualified. So when I started showing, like, all right, we made this switch on this date, and now you can see here's what's happening over here, and here's what's happening over here. 6x if you do it my way.
Yeah, it's like an A/B test almost.
Exactly.
Right? Like, well, here's how we did it before, and this was the outcome, and now we've shifted, and here's the new outcome. So which one do we like better?
Yeah. And I mean, I still have stragglers too, right? And I'm like, these accounts are not marketing qualified, and look what happened. And these are, and look what happened. And like, being able to create some champions too that can say, like, yeah, this came in and I saw this spike, and then we reached out and look, they were actually in market and it worked. When you start to get other people to champion for you and excited about it, that helps a lot.
Awesome.
I'll touch base on that a little bit too on my slides. I think, in terms of trusting intent, it really, you can't look at intent in isolation. You have to look at what else the account is doing and where they are, and I'll kind of hit that point. So should we jump ahead to the next slides? So, what I wanted to start with addressing here is, really, how do I know which account should I go after? Where should I be focusing my time and energy? Before I get to that, I like Lisa's sort of story about how she got into ABM in the first place. 30 seconds on my background. Before Demandbase, I was the CEO of a company called Engagio, which is an account-based marketing platform. And before that, I was the first CMO and co-founder at Marketo. I see Carlin on the call, who I worked with back at Marketo. And we were doing the lead-based model at Marketo really well, but found that it wasn't enough. Started doing kind of more account-based activities. It worked really well, but ultimately, it was also very hard, which is what led me to sort of see the opportunity for more technology, start Engagio, Norwest invested, here we are today. So, when it comes to being an account-based, I think one of the most important lessons is that, success comes from relevance, right? There's so many people trying to reach the same accounts that if you're being generic, you're not going to win. And so you have to focus, but at any given point in time, the number of accounts you could be going after is way more than the number you can actually go after. And so one of the most important things is to have a defined strategy for how are you going to focus. And I want to talk about 3 ways you can do that, different styles of ABX, segmentation, and then triggers. So the first, we'll spend the most time on the different styles. So if you go to the next slide, back to the question Lisa Ames posed at the beginning, when is ABM right? Well, a big part of that is realizing that ABM is not a one size fits all. There are lots of kinds of ABM that are appropriate for different types of deal sizes. So at the very top of the pyramid, you have what I call one-to-one ABM. This is strategic. This is complete, deep account research with highly customized programs. You're going to invest a lot of money, up to $50,000 per year per account. But it's worth it because these are your 7- and 8-figure deals. You can't have very many of these. The median number is 14 that companies can actually have. This next style, the next slide, is one to few. This is a little bit more scalable. You're going to focus on micro clusters of accounts with deep research at the cluster level and then moderate levels of account level personalization. Your spend per account is about an order of magnitude lower, and the deal sizes are about an order of magnitude lower. But as a result, you can have more accounts in this style. The median number is 50. The third style is where I think a lot of companies, on the next slide, please, where a lot of companies actually play, because this is for the deals between $50,000 to $250,000 a year. A lot of us have ACVs in that range. This is where you're going to see broader programs, lighter personalization, more use of technology, more use of segmentation and triggering. And then the last style on the next slide is, we could debate whether that's really ABM. I just call it targeted demand generation, where you're going to run your regular campaigns, but focus on specific accounts. So the first takeaway I have from this is, ABM is not a one size fits all. It's a spectrum with traditional demand gen on one end and completely bespoke marketing on the other end. And the right style has to do with your ACVs. There isn't one that's better or worse. It's just what's right for your ACVs. Now, with that setup, if you go to the next slide, now we can start thinking about how many accounts you can actually have and how can I pick them. And a big mistake I've seen companies make is to pick their accounts before they define how they're going to treat their accounts. And what that ends up doing is it ends up resulting in you're picking too many accounts for each style that you can't really be as personalized as you want. So a better practice is, I recommend, start by defining how you're going to treat each account. The entitlements, what is marketing going to do for each account and what is sales going to do? What you're looking at here is these are the actual entitlements we use at Demandbase. So here's how we're going to treat a one-to-one. Here's how we're going to treat a one-to-few, et cetera. And you'll also notice, we are using this term MQA, or marketing qualified account. This is when that account is in market, showing signs of being ready to buy. And we're going to add additional entitlements when we see those things going on. This tells us how many accounts we can have. For us, each rep gets 5 one-to-ones, 30 one-to-fews, and 100 one-to-manys. And the rest of their accounts in their territory fall into the ICP bucket. So then lastly, on my next slide, we now are ready to start to actually pick the accounts. And I like to use this FIRE acronym to help focus the account selection process. You'll see FIRE stands for fit, intent, relationship, engagement. And you'll see intent on here. Intent does matter. Who's in market? Who's researching your solutions? But as Lisa S. pointed out, that's not sufficient by itself. You also need the fit. Who's your ideal customer profile? You want to know the relationship, the context with that account. Don't recommend sales to go after an account that they already know about. If they lost an opportunity 2 weeks ago there, don't recommend it. I don't care how much intent they're showing. The rep knows better probably in that case. And last but not least, engagement. What are they doing on your site? So intent tells you what they're doing off on the open web. Engagement tells you what they're doing with you. Two sides of the coin, you kind of need both. And you can combine those into predictive models. So my actual last slide on the next one is then how do we can bring this all together into our account selection process. We like to do a process that I call marketing driven and sales owned. What I mean by that is it's important to me that the sales team feels like they own the picking of the accounts, because you want them to feel ownership of the whole process. But I want marketing to guide them using FIRE as much as possible. So what we do is on an annual basis, we give the reps a spreadsheet of their territory with some key firmographic information, like what marketing technologies they use, their size, and so on. And then we show them the fit score, their intent score, their relationship score, and their engagement score, combine it into a single overall score. And now we let the sales pick. Okay, here's the data. You pick your top 5, you pick your next 30, but we're guiding them. And I think that works really, really well.
It does, John. You're making a really important point, because it's a question I get a lot too. So back when I was at Demandbase, that was how we did it. It was sort of like a blend between the machine and human intervention, right? And I felt like that was a good representation, because as you pointed out, sales has to feel like they have skin in the game, that they have a voice. And so a lot of companies will ask me, well, what's your point of view? Do you think, should we just use the intent data and like nothing's manual? And so it sounds like you're saying maybe not. Maybe it is a combination to get the best outcome. Is a little bit of, there's intent data, but there's also that, the sales team can go through and know this one, yes, this one, no, because they have that inside scoop on those accounts that the machine isn't going to have visibility into.
Absolutely. And what this machine does really well is tell you when you should trigger extra focus. So, if a rep has 100 one-to-many accounts, we're not giving a ton of focus to every one of those every week. But when we see those accounts start showing significant intent surges, or the data tells us there's a new executive they just hired, right? That can be an automated trigger to say, hey, pay more attention to this account, right? So it is very much working hand in hand.
Love it.
Lisa, do you want to add anything on kind of the account selection process, or should we jump to kind of how we engage with the accounts?
Yeah, we can jump to how we engage, because I'll touch on it a little bit there. too. So let's see, we started ABM around February of this year at MindTickle, where I'm at now. And so we're not quite as mature as like what John's describing. So to get things going, the first thing we did was pull down intent data on all of the accounts and broke them into regions and then down by rep and gave them a list and said, basically what John's saying, here's the accounts that are what we would consider in the sweet spot, ready for outreach, that are searching for ramp time. And we're going to put together a campaign around ramp time, because that's one of the things that we help with, and focus on that to get this started. And some of it was to help kind of train the reps and how to do ABM and work with marketing to get them excited, right? They were picking their own accounts, like John said, like we were leading, but it was their show and it was their accounts. But we put some guardrails on it, and here's how we're going to do it. And I've got a little breakout of kind of what it looked like in a couple slides. But the idea is knowing kind of that sweet spot, and then how do you scale? So we've got these one-to-one campaigns set up, but I'm kind of cheating and using dynamic display ads, dynamic landing pages, and tapping our chat bot now into the intent data so that if we know the account, we can personalize the information on the page without having to manually do any of that. So we stood up campaigns for those selected accounts, and each rep got between 3 and 5. So that's kind of in the sweet spot that John was talking about too, is, we can only really handle that many. But then to scale this, we also put on an always on campaign, so one to many. And this is how we've outlined it. At an early stage, when accounts just start to show what I call signs of life, they're starting to search for, they have pain points or searching for generic keywords. In our case, it's like ramp time, sales coaching, sales enablement. But they have not been, like, we know that less than like 3% have been to our website. We know our job is to educate them that MindTickle can help with that. So marketing is putting the campaigns out there, getting the thought leadership materials and blog posts and things like that to help educate them. So early on, we're in this education stage. Our goal is to get them to know about MindTickle and that MindTickle can help. Once they've hit a certain threshold of engagement between all of the different channels, opening our emails, coming to our website, probably searching for our competitors too, showing very strong signals, they move over into this threshold of being in a decision-making stage. If they meet our ICP fit and all the other criteria, up on a dashboard for our BDRs and AEs, these accounts get served up. So if it's a tier 1, the AE gets notified. If it's a tier 2, the BDRs get notified. And then they have a whole cadence attached to the campaign that's being run on these accounts already by marketing, that they know it's time to like go and trigger that execution. Marketing is still going to provide air cover. We're going to be changing what we're doing at this point. Maybe we're providing success stories and research reports and like further down the funnel types of content. But we're also like tagging sales and saying, your turn to jump in, like now is the time, and have this coordinated effort. So that's more what I would consider scalable and are always on one-to-many. We're adding different major thought leadership, like what I consider pillars to this, so that we've got right now 3 always on different campaigns to help surround our accounts with this. So we could go to the next slide. So this is just a look under the hood, like I said, of kind of what's happening. But John talked about ICP fit and like your TAM. We're looking at if an account's not in market, yes, we do awareness things. As events start popping up, we'll be more on that. We do content syndication. Like We do some what I consider traditional demand gen, but the bulk of our efforts are all towards these ICP fit accounts. And if an account comes in or is starting to show these signs of life and hit the threshold, we actually send them over to what we call our MRT team to enrich the data and make sure that we've got as much. Our goal is, our SLA is 6 account or contacts attached to that account. And then we pass it on that dashboard that I was talking about over to sales to start working, or the BDR team. If somebody comes inbound, kind of the bottom in the gray, or let's say we do an event and we get leads, we still kind of filter it through this. But if someone comes inbound, raises their hand, requests a demo, one of those types of things, we attach that to an account. We still want to enrich the data, make sure it's accurate. And it's not what I call a Mickey Mouse lead. It's like, fake form fill type thing. And then if it looks to be a good fit, we pass it on. If it doesn't, we have a whole like a nurture program that we run, and they can watch a demo on their own and that type of thing. So that's what's happening behind the scenes, again, to help us not only scale, but maximize our team's output on the outreach side of things. And then the next slide here is just, again, like I said, an example of kind of an earlier stage, our first out of the gates campaign, but we meet weekly with the field. We go to all the regional calls and we walk through any new campaigns that are going out, and we talk through like divide and conquer. And again, really sharing with them, like, here's all the things that marketing is doing for this campaign. These are the accounts that we're going after for it. This is the segment we built and why. And here's the outreach sequence we created for you guys. Feel free to customize it. But this is what the outline of it is and what's going on. And then we also have our BDRs and AEs connect up with the chat bot part of things too. So if one of their accounts comes in to the landing page we created, they'll get a notification so that they can jump in and do that with our qualified chat bot. So this is kind of the overarching big picture.
Lisa, are you guys doing much with direct mail or with website personalization?
We just added gifting in the last couple of weeks. We're not using direct mail yet, and I've gone back and forth on it. Part of the reason why is just getting accurate information for people right now and where they are. Are you guys, I've had success with it in the past. I just haven't added it here yet. Are you guys using direct mail?
We've had really good success with it, especially for the sort of top tier accounts where we can send something highly personalized and relevant, as opposed to just, hey, here's a box of cookies, type situation.
Yeah.
And when it is so personalized and relevant, it's worth it for us to track them down, get the address, maybe have a human come touch there. But what I love most about this, regardless of whether you're using direct mail or web personalization or these, is the concept of orchestration, right? And it's really about making sure all these channels kind of are working together. Your slide really makes that point well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's that yin and yang for sure.
And even during COVID, so having done the direct mail program at Demandbase and then taking it to my next company after I left, we even had success with it during COVID, like with permission base, where we would send a picture of like, here's a cool thing you're going to get, right? And, tell us where to send it. And well, this is a one-time use data. We're going to purge this data. We're not keeping it. Where do you want it sent? So we're not saying, what's your home address, right? Where would you like it sent? And the uptake was pretty big, and it saved costs because we didn't have to ship proactively to everybody.
So yeah. I think my slide's next, as we kind of, get into the concept of orchestration. If you go to the next slide, please. I think, Lisa touched on this. I just wanted to kind of double click into it a little bit more deeper. To me, the most important thing you can do is make sure that your go-to-market is aligned to where each account is in its journey. And so, it starts with understanding where the account is in the journey. And, there's lots of ways you can think about defining the stages of your funnel. Lisa's using 6 Sense, and she mentioned there's a couple stages they use. This is how we do it at Demandbase, where we have a set of out of the box stages, but then customers can customize them to match their own business. But at the top, that first stage we call qualified. These are the accounts that are in our ICP with the F from FIRE, but they're not showing any intent or engagement. So we want to go after them. They don't even know who we are. If you move down the awareness stage, this is starting to show accounts that are a fit and are also showing awareness for the category. So they know about ABM, but they still don't really know about Demandbase. The third bucket is now they're starting to go further and engage with us. They are coming to our website and downloading our content, but they're still not showing signs of actually being in market. They're not that magic marketing qualified account yet. And for that, that's where we're using predictive analytics to say, hey, this account is showing the pattern of behaviors that other accounts have shown as they led to being an opportunity. And then obviously you have open opportunity customers and post-sale stages. On the next slide, please. It kind of highlights a little bit kind of like how we think about the orchestration of our campaigns based on the journey stage. So those qualified accounts at the top, the last thing we're going to do is try to send them a direct mail package and get a meeting, right? Because it's too early in their process for that. All we're going to really try to do is build our brand with them on a foundation of trust. This is really about building an emotional connection. So we do rely pretty heavily on advertising, at that very, very, top stage, because we're just building brand. As we see an account move down, we're going to move from emotion to logic. We're going to try to get more thought leadership and education. So webinar invites, content syndication, things like that. And then when we hit that MQA stage, this is where the orchestration blows up with direct mail, a customized Cameo message with a recording from a celebrity, SDRs following up, all sorts of things, because we really want to go after that account in that magic moment when they're ready, but before they've come to us. We continue when it's an open opportunity. Here, there's a whole buying committee, and the sales rep probably isn't talking to everybody on that buying committee. So we want to really focus on validating their decision, helping our buyers build consensus around Demandbase as the right answer. Advertising plays a big role, but direct mail and other things also fit in really well. And then we continue to market to our customers after the sale to sort of help, drive adoption and find expansion opportunities. So to me, this is, regardless of what channel you use, what's most important is that it's the right interaction for where that buyer is in its journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say too, as people still buy from people they like. I mean, it really comes down to that basic thing. So you have to figure out how to connect with them on a one-to-one personal level, even though you're selling to be a whole account. So like John mentioned Cameo, that's why we're going to try adding the gifting, and that's why direct mail works. And the more you can start to make something feel special and personal to that person and solve the problem, be a trusted partner, show that value, the better. I mean,
in some ways, keep your salespeople away from the accounts that are too early, because you're going to hurt the relationship more than help it with a generic SDR outreach to, when they're not ready.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's part of back to like, how do you switch from leads and how do you get people to buy into the intent? And when you start to show that when you hit accounts in the sweet spot, your conversion rate goes up 6x. And it's because, like, if I fill out a form, which I won't even do anymore for the most part, but if I do, I don't want a phone call. I mean, that's not why I filled out the form, and it's a bad experience. And people expect more than that now. I think at first when forms like came out, you kind of, it's just like a necessary evil, but there's better ways now, and people expect a better experience.
It's exactly right. And we've been talking about the idea that MQL volume going down is a good thing because it means quality is going up and you're engaging with them at the right time rather than, oh, they did some action like filling out a form, we better go chase them. And I'm the same as you, Lisa. Like when I fill out a form, I like, oh, I know someone's going to contact me and I know I'm going to reject that contact because I'm doing my exploration. I'm doing my self-education. I'm doing a self-directed buyer's journey.
Yep.
This is why
Which we know is like 80% of the research is done before you're ready to talk to someone. I mean, it's kind of a stat that's been thrown out there for a couple of years now. So,
well, it used to be like 60.
Yeah.
John, what were you going to say?
Teaching the idea that it's not account-based marketing, it's account-based experience. Because we need to be creating the right experience for our buyers. And the classic account-based marketing, fishing with the spear, is not buyer-centric. It's poking people with a spear. That doesn't. All right, I think measurement.
Ouch.
Totally agree.
Ouch.
I think measurement is next. Oh, wait,
Tina.
right. I had one last point I wanted to make before we get to measurement. This is one of my most important takeaways, which is we're talking about getting sales and marketing to work together, align with the accounts, do the right thing at the right stage. And I always get the questions like, okay, how do I do that? How do I actually align with sales? And there's books written on the topic, but the idea of an ABX or an ABM stand-up is the single best thing I've ever seen. All you do is make it a every other week meeting that has only 3 people, the marketer or a marketer, the SDR, and the AE. No management, nobody else. And it can be a 15-minute meeting, again, every 2 weeks. And the goal is, let's talk about that rep's accounts. What's going on and what are we going to do? And it works wonders. And I sometimes hear like, oh my gosh, that seems like a lot of work. But if you think about it, 15 minutes, if you're going to allocate, 1/5 of your time, you could literally, one rep can cover at least 30 AEs. And so this is worth making the investment because it drives the alignment so well. Now we get to measurement. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to hit that takeaway. So, I think, there's lots of discussion around how should you measure an ABM world, and we've already talked about, it's not about MQLs. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. Your MQLs are going to go down. It's about engagement at the right account. But probably the simplest model I've found is to just move from your classic lead-based funnel to an account-based funnel. Stop tracking MQLs and SQLs and SALs. And instead, whether it's, however you define the stages of your journey, start tracking movement. How many accounts did you move from qualified to engaged? For example, how many did you move into MQA? How many of your MQAs converted into opportunities? You're probably doing that last one already. And just keeping track of the movement and how long things take in your conversion rates, which you've been doing for years, but just doing it at the account level, introducing that MQA, that's my number one takeaway for getting started on measurement. And Lisa has a slide on measurement next.
Yeah, I do. And it's interesting. Again, we're still standing things up. And so just from an earlier stage, have a lot of support. Everyone's all excited about doing this, but they're used to seeing what they're used to seeing. And so, yeah, well, I kind of was looking at John's list. I'm like, okay, it's kind of 4 V's: value, volume, conversion, and velocity. And that's what we're measuring too. But I'm also still like, I'll say this is how many MQAs we had. Because if you remember my first slide, I said at the very beginning, if we're going to hit our numbers at the conversion rates that are our goals, we need this many. And so we are tracking it. But here's the other thing, like we're hitting our MQAs, we're not hitting our sales qualified opportunities. So then we're looking at where are the potential gaps and problems in that, why aren't we? And then I'm starting to pull reports saying, because 48% of the accounts we were working were not MQAs. And if we're having, a 12% conversion rate from this to this on these, and 6 times that on these, like this is where we need to focus. So, we're still kind of going through the motion of how do we really get people to go with this new strategy? We have to kind of mix in some of the stuff that people are used to seeing. But bottom line, it still is the conversion rates, and it's the volume and the velocity of the ACV that are the top of our mind too.
Awesome. All right, is that, I think we're ready for our audience questions. And I wanted to just kick it off here with, again, something that I get asked quite a bit as I talk to our companies. People are curious about readiness for an ABM solution. It's an investment. And so, like, what are the things that they should or could do to prepare themselves? Because one of the patterns that I see is people say, oh, I want to do ABM. Okay, so we better go out and buy an ABM solution. And I'm usually like trying to rein them in a little and say, that's not to say you shouldn't, but like, you know, the alignment piece, for example, are we all going to commit to doing this, to taking an account-based approach? Like, how are we going to measure? What are the things, you know, how do we, you know, align on like the tiers of our list and that kind of thing? So I'm curious from your point of view, like, what are the things that maybe could or should be done in terms of readiness before making an investment, so that you can be sure that once you make that investment, you're going to adopt the solution and, you know, get value out of it rather than have it be shelfware?
For me, I think the number one thing would be going back to those entitlements. You know, if you can sit down with how the marketing team and the sales team sit down and say, if we agree an account is a one-to-one account, this is what we're going to do, right? And it might be as simple as, I am not going to have SDRs prospect into them if they're not showing signs of being in market. I mean, whatever, you know, if you can just get that contract written, like, that is so foundational to just kicking things off the right way. You know, and then from there, obviously you align on your measurement and et cetera, et cetera. But that'd be my key. What would you do, Lisa?
Yeah, I'll say kind of back to where I started on that article that I read, and it was like these different things that have to be the criteria. And this last, like joining MindTickle, for example, when I came in interviewing and they were talking through, like, it's a complex sale and this is the product market fit and this is what's happening. And they were doing a very traditional lead scoring and lead processing method. And they knew that they were going to want to grow at a 75% rate in a market that's growing at a 25% rate. So I said, you know, how are you going to scale? Doing it this way, this is what the outcomes, like, you're going to have to quadruple your amount of resources and money, you know, and it's frankly, I think it's going to die. Like, people are not going to fill out forms. So then what are you going to do? So once we kind of got the buy-in, like, okay, we need to make this pivot and this change at the leadership level. And they knew, like, the RVPs, when I came in, I interviewed with all of them as well. Like, they knew change needed to happen. So I had the buy-in at the leadership level. And it was like, we're ripping off a Band-Aid. I'm not going to try to go backwards and fix all these other things. We're going to just get this done right and build out a machine that works, that's scalable, that can grow with the company. And, you know, not to say it's been easy, but I think if we were trying to fix something that was half broken and half launch, you know, a hybrid account-based strategy, we wouldn't get the results and it would be twice as much work. So my take is kind of like, if you got to get that leadership buy-in, but then it's like full force ahead and a lot of continued education, pulling data, reminding people, like, this is what we're doing, this is the results we're seeing so far. And, you know,
right. And here's some things
internal.
Yeah. And here's things that could go wrong. When I was just talking to someone Friday about this, she's like, well, do we rip the Band-Aid off, or do we do 1 foot in and 1 foot out? And I was like, well, I think you can rip the Band-Aid off, but just articulate what are the things that could go wrong, that will go wrong, and then come up with a plan for how you're going to address that so that you're not flat-footed down,
Yeah.
a few weeks in. One other question I get quite a bit, and feel free, I invite the audience here to jump in with questions via the chat, or if you just want to blurt something out, that's great too. One other thing is people want to know, well, do I have to have a headcount dedicated to my ABM program? What's your point of view on resourcing this?
I'll just jump in and say, everyone on my team is demand focused in one way, shape, or form, and we run an account-based marketing strategy. So whether you're the person who's helping with the display ads or field marketing, working closely with the AEs and building out campaigns, or helping with the website or copy or whatever, everything's aligning to the objectives of creating this stage-based account strategy, and we're all account-based. I know some teams that build out a group that is only focused on that, but I look at that then as you're kind of treating it as a tactic, and I look at it as a holistic approach, and everyone has a part in it.
Yeah, I'm very aligned with that as well. As a fairly sophisticated ABM practitioner, there is no ABM person on the team. Everybody does ABM.
Yeah.
The one nuance I would say is, I think if you are going to invest in an ABM technology, like, you do want to have somebody who sort of is the owner. Like they own the platform, they manage the platform. They're really working to make sure that that platform is being rolled out successfully, internally with marketing and with sales.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so a question here from our friend Pete. If you had to pick 5 tried and true must-do ABM tactics in terms of outreach, what would they be? Paid search, email, trade shows, etc.
I just go back to, like, ABM is, I don't look at it as a tactic. I look at it as a holistic go-to-market approach. And that slide where I was showing all the orchestration, like, you can leave some of those things out and it will probably still work, but the more touch points, the more you can meet your audience where they are, and they're in different places, the more successful you're going to be.
Yeah, I agree with that point, although I do want to try to answer Spirit of Pete's question a little bit. So I think, advertising is by far the easiest one to get started with, and is also can be very effective, especially if you align it to the journey stage. What's so easy about advertising is you don't need to get sales involved besides picking the accounts. Nothing changes. It's just, you start running ads, and the accounts you care about visit your website more. And that's a good thing. So that one is, I think, effective and easy. One step harder on difficulty, but can be effective to me, is the direct mail plus SDR combo. Where it's sort of an integrated campaign. We send something and then they, relevant, and then they follow up. Third, perhaps your single most powerful ABM tactic is an outreach from one of your executives. So if you have your CFO reach out to their CFO or something like that, and again, kind of, you can't scale that to every account, but you can certainly scale that to your kind of target accounts. And then the last one, is not really a tactic, but is that ABM stand-up, and just get in place some mechanism where sales and marketing are looking at the same data about your accounts and then sharing and talking information.
I love what you said there, John, because I think it speaks to the importance of ongoing alignment. Sales and marketing alignment isn't like a box you check, right? Like, well, we're going to stand up ABM, so we better get aligned with sales. And then, like, you come into your corner and then you go away. It's something it's constant. And that was one of the things I love so much about my time at Demandbase, is how tightly aligned we were with sales and how effective it was, and just how gratifying it was as a marketer to feel like, oh gosh, like, we're finally on the same page. And we stayed on the same page over a period of years.
Yeah, another thing I'll just say is very similar to just a general demand gen campaign, is having those display ads, tie back to a specific landing page that's going to answer the question. So if I know someone's searching for ramp time and I start serving them up display ads about ramp time, I'm going to drive them to a landing page about ramp time. I'm going to have content that's going to help answer their questions. And then I'm going to make sure that the BDR outreach talks about ramp time. And maybe I'm inviting them to attend a webinar and this piece of content or that. But I've seen, I mean, it sounds really basic, but I've seen so many times where you just have like these canned cadences and in your outreach sequences for your BDRs, and it's not connected to the campaign that marketing was running, and there's a disconnect. And, you know, kind of go back to basics, what John was saying, like the display too. Like I saw Udi made a post the other couple months ago now about display, and like it doesn't, you know, it's a very low conversion rate, but they're able to prove that whatever the percentage was higher of accounts that engage with them got display ads. So, you know, there's just this whole idea again back to surrounding the account, making a really big difference.
But that is a really important point to emphasize. Like, your goal with the advertising is not clicks. You know, it is not leads. If you measure it that way, it's going, I guarantee you, it's going to suck. Right? It will not look good. It will not look good on a cost per lead basis. You know, you know, and I say that as an ad vendor, like it will not look good. You know, the way you measure it is, you know, are the accounts you care about coming to your website more and engaging better on all the other channels? And that one I can pretty much guarantee, if you do it right, you'll see good.
Because you're ultimately driving greater pipeline at those same accounts that you've surrounded. So that's your success metric. So some more questions coming in. Kelly asked I think a follow on to Lisa's thing about when you were talking about the landing pages. Are you asking them to fill out a form on that landing page, or is this just about getting them to engage with the content?
Yeah, no forms. The only time I would put a form is if it's like a webinar for them to register to.
Yeah.
The intent data that I have and like the UTM parameters and everything hooking up in the back end, I can tell that account came to my landing page or that they opened an email or whatever. So that's giving me those like intent surges that John was talking about, so that I know what they're doing without having to put a form up.
Right. And if we just, like we talked about this on our last webinar with Chris Walker about just the math of that, right? So would you rather get like 1% of the people that click the form, and, you know, how many people does that's actually reading your content, versus if you give it away, it's 100% of the people versus 1%. So I think I'd rather have the 100% and then trust or believe that those folks are going to feel an impact. They're going to think the content is valuable, and then they're going to find you. They're going to come to your website. Maybe they'll have been influenced by an ad, and then, you know, fill out that demo request, for example, because they see you as an expert. We have a question here from John about intent data. Can you talk more about how you calculate intent data? And maybe this ties back to our conversation earlier about like, how do we create trust in the data among the sales team?
Sure, I'll tackle that first. So there's lots of kinds of intent data, right? Even when I was talking about engagement, who's coming to your site, you could argue that's a kind of intent. That's first party intent. But usually people are talking about third party intent. You know, which is trying to see what companies are doing kind of out on the open web. There's lots of ways you can do that, and every intent provider sort of gets it from a different source. So, for example, you know, the way we do it at Demandbase is we're connected to the bid stream. So we see almost every B2B page where there is an ad impression. And what we can do is when we get that impression, we look at, well, we match which account is on that page, not person, but which account. And then we do natural language processing to see what that page is about. And then you do lots of machine learning, and you can start to find patterns and say, people at this account tend to read articles about this topic. So you can establish sort of baselines, and then you can also look for trends and say, wow, people at this account are reading a lot more about this topic than they were a month ago. Maybe there's something going on. So that's typically how it works. I said, we get it off the bid stream. Other people can get it off of other data sources. And then you have really different kinds of intent, like G2. You know, they can give you intent based upon which companies are reading reviews of you and your competitors on their site. That's not as useful for kind of knowing who's in market before they raise their hand, but it's really useful to know for your open opportunities and your existing customers, you know, what might be going on, you know, with the competition, for example. So the last thing I'll say is, because there's so many different kinds of intent, you know, I don't think anybody should sort of, you know, think that they only have to have one intent provider. You know, if you can afford it, more intent is like having more leads, right? They are complementary and they're useful to each other. And even at Demandbase, you know, we have Demandbase and we also use Bombora, for example.
Awesome. Just looking at some of the questions that came in advance of the webinar. People are wanting to know how long it takes to see results when establishing an ABM program.
Well, I'll say for me, it's like
like
our average cycle time is 5.7 months. And we've been doing this for 5.7 months. I'm starting to see results. And I saw some things early on, like I mentioned, like 6x conversion rates and things like that. But it does take some time. I mean, it's not an overnight thing, but some of it will depend on the complexity of your sale, the maturity of your teams, you know, how fast you can stand things up, and what your average deal cycle time is.
And like, are there early indicators, especially if you have a long sales cycle, are there early indicators that it's working?
That's, I think, you know, that's why I would say, you know, you got to look all the way up that journey in each of the stages, because you can't wait for a year to prove that it works. And if you're going after big accounts that are cold, it might take that long to warm them up before they're actually even ready to talk to a salesperson.
Yeah. Oh, and then what, so here's one. What advice or tools do you recommend for geographic heat mapping at a person versus account level? We want to start doing in-person ABM events, but with people taking advantage of flexible work from home policies and moving away from the office, it's become to give our reps decent quality target attendee lists.
You know,
I'll tell you, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, the key is you got to sort of, you know, you want to track engagement, and then based upon where those people are physically. And I think, you know, the concern is a lot of people don't feel like they've got good data about where people are located physically. We actually use Marketo. You know, Marketo does a, you know, reverse IP mapping on the leads and the people in the database to metro areas. And then that gets pulled for us into Demandbase and we can report on it. So that's one method. Lisa, you were going to say something. And then
I was just going to say, I haven't done a lot of it. Starting to experiment now with digital billboards, like for Dreamforce coming up here. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Great. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour, and I have other questions that were submitted in advance, but since we're out of time, I wanted to give the audience a last opportunity to chime in with their questions. Anyone have anything? Okay, well, let's call that a wrap then. And thank you so much to Lisa and John, and for our audience members. Appreciate you attending today, and we'll see you in our in September the 14th, I think it is, with Udi from Gong on building an iconic B2B brand. See you then.